Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. Today I've got a question for y'all. Why? Why do we do it? If you're watching this video, chances are you are a knife enthusiast or collector. And heck, let's just make it more broad. EDC enthusiast / collector. My question is, why? Why knives? What is it about knives that we find so compelling? Because let's be honest with ourselves for a little bit, guys. Just heart to heart, have some honesty. It's a little freaking weird. Especially for me. I gotta be honest. You know, I sit down and I record videos. Me talking to myself about knives. That's some psycho behavior right there. Right? A lot of people, I think, would find this hobby a little bit weird. And perhaps rightfully so. You know, you never really want to start a conversation with, yeah, I collect knives. What? Imagine, you're on a first date with a girl, and she's like, so, tell me about yourself. And you say, well, I collect knives. It's probably not what you want to start with. You probably don't want to lead with that. Of course, we understand this hobby, you know, amongst ourselves. But I think to a lot of outsiders, that comes off as a little bit weird. You collect knives? Yeah. Yeah, I do. You know, collecting pins or flashlights or wallets or handkerchiefs, you know, might be a little bit weird, but I don't think it has the same kind of weird as just saying, I collect knives. Now, obviously, you know, it's not a weird hobby. Maybe it is, but it's not. There is something really, really interesting about these tools that all of us find to be supremely mind-itching. What is it? Knives are indispensable tools. Cutting utensils are indispensable in your day-to-day life for everything from cutting food to opening a package. Everyone uses cutting instruments on a daily basis. In fact, bladed tools have been around longer than our genus. The very first hand tools that included things like hand axes date back to about 3 million years. And there's a famous archaeological site, the Lomweki site. I've talked about this in another video, but these tools are older than the genus Homo. That's pretty awesome, if you think about it. Primates that evolved the ability to use tools and especially figured out how to make rocks into sharp objects did really, really well, and eventually, you know, gave birth to a lineage that produced Homo sapiens, the most powerful animal that's ever lived on the planet. You know, they're useful items. I recommend everyone to carry a pocket knife. Everyone in my personal life, I tell them you should carry a pocket knife. Start carrying a pocket knife and you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. And I stand by that. Everyone should carry a knife. But as far as tools go, I think most people can make do with 2 or 3 knives. A good folding knife, maybe an outdoor knife, some knives in your kitchen. Depending on what your own needs and requirements are, will vary the kind of tools and the number of them that you require. But by and large, most people can probably get through their life with 1 to 3 knives. But I have way more than 3 knives. And I'm sure a lot of you do as well. Why would someone collect knives? What makes them collectible? A lot of people just have like kind of a collector's mindset, a mentality. And people collect everything from Beanie Babies to antique cars. People like to collect things. There's a certain sense of enjoyment and satisfaction in chasing something down, acquiring it, and then putting it on your shelf. Or whatever other forms of enjoyment you get out of it. Some people collect like video games, they get a lot of enjoyment out of playing them. Some people collect cigars or whiskeys, and they get an immense sense of satisfaction from having a glass or having a smoke every so often on special occasions. People like to collect things. My knife collecting journey started when I was a teenager. I thought knives were really, really cool, and part of that was because I was a stupid teenager, and a lot of the enjoyment that I got out of pocket knives was the fantasy of being some kind of ninja, right? Which obviously was never going to happen, and it did not happen. I hate to break it to you guys, but I did not, in fact, grow up to become a ninja. But even as a teenager, my tastes were starting to be a little bit refined. I had a lot of Mall Ninja type of knives, a lot of M-Tex and things, zombie deco and freaking serrations all over the place, weird holes in the blade and goofy recurves. I had a lot of knives like that, and I thought they were cool. I thought they were fun. They were interesting to me. But I also grew up on a cattle ranch. I grew up around cowboys and loggers and hunters, people who use knives a lot. And so I also had a really good understanding of the practical use of knives. I remember when I was a kid, the most beautiful knives in the world to me, and the knives that I consider to be the most premium, were case slip joints. Those were knives that were very special, kind of revered in a way. When I graduated high school, I was given a case trapper, and that was a big deal to me. It was kind of I don't know, like a necessary part of stepping into the next stage of my life. My father, my grandfather, and I all have matching case Stockmans, which is something really, really special. And I got mine on my birthday, and Grandpa got his on Christmas, and my dad was one that gave them, and he got his earlier before that. It just felt special. I also had a really big appreciation for a lot of fixed blades. Again, growing up around people who are constantly working in the woods, I had a good understanding of what a good outdoor/hunting fixed blade needed to be. And so for me, pocket knives or knives in general were always a part of my life. I carried a knife from the time I was about 7 years old, whether it was, for Boy Scouts or to help my family out around the ranch. A knife was an important part of that. And so I think that right there, just having them be such a big part of my life automatically formed a little bit of an attachment. And of course there are hundreds of different kinds of knives to look at, and I remember looking at Blade magazines and Knives Illustrated and being just kind of mind blown by how many different companies and makers there were out there, and all their different styles and unique flair. It was really, really interesting to me, and it was really fun to me. I never in a million years would have even considered, ever owning a knife that is $400. But just like any hobby, there's tiers. There's entry level, there's, the normie level, I guess, and then you've got your high-end collector's exclusive type of level. And I think everyone in any kind of hobby moves through these different levels at different points, right? You start out at, it's kind of nothing, so you want something that's entry level, and then you start to learn a little bit more. Your scopes widen a little bit. You start looking at some of the things that are available, and then maybe one day you'll upgrade to that higher tier that previously was maybe out of reach. And it doesn't mean that you jump all the way to $1,000 customs. It might be that you start buying $100 knives every once in a while, or maybe you buy one premium knife. However you collect is personal to you, and that's one of the great things about a hobby. Okay, well, none of that answers the question that we've been asking. Not everyone grew up around knives like I did, and just because there is a market for collectors doesn't explain why knives are collectible. The fact that they're awesome tools might contribute, but it still doesn't explain why some people are fascinated with collecting knives. A lot of the people that I knew growing up, people like my dad and my grandpa, people who use knives all the time, aren't real big into collecting them. They really don't understand why I collect knives. They don't understand why a pocket knife would be $450. That's where the collectability comes in. Obviously, everyone is going to be a little bit different, but one of the big reasons why I find knives so interesting is because I like the elements that make a good tool. I really enjoy the materials that we make knives out of. Titanium frame locks, new blade steels, stuff like that's really exciting for me. Opening mechanisms. How's a knife open? Is it a flipper? Is it thumb studs? Is it a fixed blade? How are you carrying the sheath? Is it Kydex? Is it leather? What kind of edge do you have on there? What's the size? What's the lock? All of these are elements that I find to be really, really interesting. I'm someone that really likes to know how things work. I like tools and machines, and that's a big reason why I enjoy pocket knives. Another reason I enjoy pocket knives, and I think this is another reason for a lot of people, is the history. There is something deep in my brain that just likes a well-made tool. I love old slip joints and classic fixed blades, knives that remind me of days gone by, mountain men out settling the frontier, or my grandparents here working on the ranch with their little imperial stockmen. I find stuff like that to be very, very fascinating. And so in a lot of ways, collecting knives is kind of like collecting history. And then, of course, there's the aesthetics, the beauty, the art. I really like knives that look goofy, like this CJRB Fugly. I like designers who think outside the box. I get excited about a knife that looks a little bit different, a little bit non-traditional, a knife that kind of looks maybe not even so much like a knife. To me, that is really, really cool. And I do think that there's a lot of beauty to be found in a pocket knife. It's a weird thing to find beauty in, right? A tool. I don't really think many people find beauty in wrenches. I've seen some really beautiful hammers, but I don't think that's a common thing necessarily. But to me, there is a lot of beauty in a well-made tool. The blade to handle ratio, the feel of the designer, the way the handle curves, the way the scales are treated, the materials that are being used. Is it a beautiful Damascus blade? Is it some exotic handle material? All of this are things that add to my enjoyment of a knife. Speaking of awesome handle materials, look at that. That's beautiful right there. So I think there's a lot of things that come together to make a knife a collectible object. And I think there's a lot of reasons why different people collect. And I think the reasons I've listed are all common reasons. And I think probably most people, it's a mix of a lot of different things. Maybe it's childhood nostalgia. Maybe it's mechanics. Maybe it's the art, right? There's a lot of things that come together in a pocket knife in a lot of satisfying and unique ways that maybe some people just don't understand. But for us knife guys, it means a lot. And it's something that's fun to engage with. There's a great community here. And it's just a really wholesome hobby. I want to go back to when I was a kid, collecting my M-Techs and stuff. I'd get some of these knives and they're so cool. They have like all these crazy colors and these really weird looking designs. And I thought they were fun, but there was always something that was a little bit lacking to me. They weren't all that useful as tools out on the ranch. When I was out here cutting hay bales and things like that, the knives just didn't do that good. They fell apart. They broke easily. There was always something about them that just left me wanting more. And I didn't really know what that was until I was in college and I started experimenting with more high-end knives. And by high-end knives, I mean Syncuts and CRKTs and things like that. And all of a sudden, my eyes were opened to a whole new world of knives. And my collecting changed. Instead of collecting things because I thought they looked cool, I was collecting things because I wanted to try new things, new blade shapes, new pivot mechanisms. I remember bearings were... that was like a light bulb moment for me. I wanted to try out different bearings, different styles of actions, flippers, thumb studs, blade slots, different kinds of pocket clips, different brands. And so this period of my collecting was about variety. It was about exploration. This was kind of my newbie normie period of the knife world. Now, I mentioned that when I was a kid, I was disappointed with the performance of some of my M-Techs. And when I was in college during the summers, I worked for another ranch out in the mountains. I was cowboying, building a lot of fence, doing a lot of things that required a good pocket knife. And I became hyper focused on performance. And this was around the time that I started my YouTube channel. A lot of you guys probably remember this era of the channel. And so then the kinds of knives that I bought, the kinds of knives that I was interested in, were focused mainly on performance. Whether it was a super slicey EDC knife or an overbuilt, durable, out in the woods survival knife, I was really, really concerned with performance. And again, this goes back to when I was a teenager, because there were some knives that I just noticed worked better for certain things than other knives did, but I didn't really have the knowledge or the tools necessary to, I guess, express how different knives performed. As part of my interest in knife performance, I became really interested in materials. What blade steel holds an edge longer than what other blade steel? What are the stainless qualities of this steel, that steel, blah, 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 blah. And I got really, really into trying out as many different locks and handle materials and blade steels as I could, because I want to know what the best of the best was. And now my collecting has changed again. My tastes have changed again. I'm not working out in the mountains anymore. Right now, I'm home visiting family for Thanksgiving. You know, every once in a while I get to come home and pretend to be a cowboy again. But the fact of the matter is, I'm not. Those days are behind me. I'm doing other things with my life now. I live in the city. I work a couple of very normal types of jobs. I do still use knives on a day-to-day basis. One of my jobs is in a grocery store. I do use knives breaking down deliveries and things like that. But my needs have changed. And to be completely honest, I already have as many knives as I need for what I do these days. Nowadays, my interest in knives has really come down to the artistic value. I've kind of come full circle. I started off my interest in knives as a teenager with collecting stuff that I thought was cool, and I've come circle back to collecting stuff that I think is cool. Things like this CJRB Fugly that are just a little bit outside the normal. Things that are just a little bit weird. I like experiencing new things like that. And of course, my channel is still focused on performance. I still want to give you guys reviews that are based on actual real-world usage. That is still something that I enjoy a whole lot. But nowadays, for the knives that I want to collect and seek out, I'm seeking out personality, character, flavor. This Hinder Jurassic, I did not buy this knife. This was sent to me. This knife here has got me thinking a lot about my knife collecting journey, because I love the personality of this knife. I love the heritage with the Hinderer line. This knife reminds me of some of those old school tactical American-made folders, because it kind of is. It's also got a lot of those really neat elements that I would have loved when I was cowboying. This is an amazing workhorse of a knife. This is the kind of knife that I would have absolutely loved to carry around the ranch and out in the mountains. This is the kind of knife that would have been just, I would have been over the moon to test and abuse this knife as much as possible. And I've been using it quite a bit here on the ranch while I've been here. That knife right there, that was sent to me by Zach, kind of represents to me a lot of what I have come to appreciate in the knife world. It's kind of a balance of performance and cool factor and mastery of the art, right? And I really, really appreciate that. I do still use my knives. I use my knives really, really hard. On my adventures around camp, when I'm doing a mountain climb, when I'm doing a backpacking trip, I use my knives and I use them hard. But I have gotten to the point where I have the knives that I need, to be completely honest. I think a lot of us are at that point. But I'm in this for the hobby, right? If I was in this for the utility of it, I would have stopped buying knives a long time ago. Or I would only buy a knife if I really, really needed one. But I'm an enthusiast. I'm in this for the fun of it. I'm in this because I like knives. I love knives. And the knives that I want to look at, the knives that I want to enjoy, spend money on, seek out are the knives that speak to me on a personal level. Maybe it's a knife that I think looks completely different, or something that I think is beautiful beyond compare. Or maybe it's something that reminds me of my early days collecting. Maybe it's something that reminds me of a certain period in history. I'm a huge fan of Bowie knives. I love Bowie knives. I will always love Bowie knives, and I love collecting Bowie knives. I will always collect Bowie knives. My collecting path has come to the point where I'm sitting back and I'm in it for just the fun of knives. That's a weird thing to say. Again, the fun of knives. A lot of people probably think that we're kooky serial killers. Hopefully not. A lot of people think that. But it's a weird thing, you know? Hi, here I am walking around my family's ranch, making a video about bladed objects. I mentioned this at the beginning of the video. It's a little bit weird. It really is. Collecting sharp objects sounds kind of weird. But for those of us that know, we know that there's something deeply satisfying about this hobby. Whether we're in it for the nostalgia, or we're in it for the functionality, the performance, or we're in it for the art. It's fun. And so I want to hear from you guys. Why do you collect knives? And I think that's where I'm going to end this video. Big shout out to my channel members at the cowboy level. I appreciate everything to do with the channel. If you want to become a member and support me directly, there's a link down below. As for the rest of you hooligans, I've been Gideon, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.